Have you ever had a childhood experience that stuck with you? Something that gives you chills even to this day? Well, mine involves a hearse, and let me tell you, it changed everything. So join me as I dive into my crazy, horrific story of how I survived getting run over by a hearse when I was just 4.5 years old. A little dramatic, I know, but I wanted to grab your attention. Hi everyone, my name is lathonmb, and before we get into my childhood story, let's ask our friend the internet for some statistics and data regarding children in car accidents. Let's get into it. It says here, it is impossible to provide the exact number of children pedestrian casualties under the age of 12 in the UK for 2025. However, data from previous years and ongoing suggests that approximately 9 young children are killed or injured on the UK roads every day. Specifically, in 2023, 3,355 children aged 7 and under were killed or injured on the roads in Britain. In the UK alone, approximately 10 young children aged 7 or under are killed or seriously injured on roads every week. This translates to about 520 children per year. While the question specifies under 12, the data tends to focus on children aged 7 and under, with some statistics also including up to 15-year-olds. So here's more of a breakdown. Total casualties. In 2023, more than 3,350 children aged 7 or under were killed or injured on the roads in Britain. Specific age groups. Break, the road safety charity, reports that in 2021, 512 children aged 7 or younger were killed or seriously injured on the British roads. 1,475 schools, nurseries and childminders are participating in Beep Beep Day to promote road safety for children aged 2 and 7. Children aged 4 and 11 account for 1 in 8 pedestrian accidents, despite making up only 10% of the population. This means that over 10,000 primary school children were hit by vehicles between 2017 and 2020. Nearly a quarter, 24% of these incidents involving primary school children resulted in serious injury or death. And the time of day, the highest number of children traffic injuries in England occur between 8 and 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. coinciding with school and travel time, so just be careful out there. So here's a little breakdown of the situation. Ongoing efforts. Organisations like Break and others are actively working to raise awareness about road safety for children and to reduce children casualties. Blake reports that in 2023, 3,355 children aged 7 and under were killed or injured on roads in Britain, with 17 fatalities and 574 seriously injured. That is crazy. So also, guys, another reason for me doing this video is also to raise awareness. You know, we've all got families, children, you know, people close to us under the ages. Don't want them getting injured and hurt, especially during their 6 weeks holiday, especially anytime we don't want them getting hurt. So let's get right into my story. This is, I know I make a joke out of a lot of things, but this is quite difficult for me to talk about because it is my story and it is what happened when I was just 4.5 years old. So I spoke to my parents and obviously it was very hard for them to drudge up the past and to talk about it, but I did get the information out of them. It was during the 6 weeks holiday. I was only 4.5, and I was due to start school in September. And we always used to go to our nan's house, and play with my brothers and my cousins. And parents are very busy, as we know, with work and everything else. So we all went out onto the street, which is just a little street, not particularly busy, not like a highway or anything like that, just a normal little suburban street. And the next thing I know, I'm hit by a car. Obviously, I don't remember because I was only young, but I got hit by a car. And my uncle, who is no longer with us, my uncle picked me up after the accident. Apparently, I got dragged from one end of the road to the other. So my injuries were quite severe. And my uncle picked me up after the accident, and so my mother tells me that he had a white shirt on and it was absolutely covered in blood. The emergency services were called, and unfortunately, guys, I had some pretty serious injuries. My ankle, because I was a child, obviously my limbs are a lot smaller then. So my ankle up to my knee was completely torn in shreds down to the bone. And it was pretty horrific. And listen to this. This is just goes to prove how spiteful, excuse me, how spiteful and nasty people can be. There was a lady that lived up the road from us, and we used to call her the witch because she was kind of evil. She never had a bad word, never had a good word to say about anybody. And she said, it should have been my head. That rhymed. It wasn't supposed to rhyme because it's true. The lady up the road, which we'll call her Mrs. W, decided to say, I wish it was his head. I mean, how spiteful can people get? Anyway, as I was so young, I was rushed into the hospital to attend to my injuries. And as a result of that, now I have a skin graft on my upper thigh where they had to take skin from to put down onto my ankle area to obviously heal. And back in the day, it wasn't the best kind of surgery. I mean, they did a fantastic job, and I'm grateful to be able to walk and to dance and to do all those things. So after the skin grafts and being in hospital for, I think it was about 6 to 7 weeks, my parents said, and there was a really friendly nurse who I absolutely adored called Cindy. And Cindy, if you are out there and you're watching this, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for taking care of me. And she always used to take me down to theatre. I don't mean the musical theatre, I mean the operating theatre, to hold my hand and make sure that I was okay. And I always wanted Cindy to take me down there because she was lovely. And this one day, a gentleman doctor came in, and he said to me that that I'd got to sleep in the big bed. Bearing in mind, I was only 4.5 years old. He said I'd got to sleep in the hospital in the big bed and not in the cot. So apparently I bit his hand because I didn't want to sleep in the big bed. I find that so funny. And, I have to laugh at this story, guys. Like I said, it is my story and it is what happened to me. And, I do have the scars to prove it. After it took me weeks and weeks to recover, I remember my auntie, actually, we used to have this big chest freezer when we were little. It was a big one to stock all the food in, and she used to sit me on there, and every week she used to change my bandages and dressing, gauze, I think they're called. Anyway, the gauze, I remember, and the pain, every time I see a gauze on television now, it makes me quiver, because I remember my auntie would take the bandage off, which would be fine, and she used to have to obviously change the dressings once a week, and the gauze would it stick to my wounds, and as she was taking it off, and I still feel the pain now of it being taken off, this gauze, and it used to cling to the healing scabs kind of thing. It was just horrendous. I remember that so well, even though I was so young. Anyway, after months and months of healing and recovering, I finally got to school. I mean, I never liked school anyway, but I finally got to school, and obviously I had to learn how to walk again, and obviously the pain was so bad. But I remember seeing the girls at school when I started primary school. They were doing gymnastics, and I remember peeking in and thinking to myself, I want to do that. So I enrolled into this gymnastics class, which was perfect for me at that age, because I was gaining movement back in my foot and everything like that. So it was perfect for that, and I really enjoyed it. And I remember doing my first ever performance. I don't remember the name of it, but I remember we had to get a pair of my mum's tights. I nearly said parents then, but my mother's tights, and we had to cut a hole in there so we could put our head through, and cut the feet off, so it became sleeves and like a bodice, and we had to sew all these little, we used to have to cut like little shapes out, so it was like feathers. And I was a jitterbug, and I still remember the song, and it went, in the treetops, the jitterbugs. And that was my very, very first performance in primary school. So that is a really good memory of something absolutely horrific that happened with the accident. But I still remember playing it, the jitterbugs, and it was just so much fun. Another thing I also remember is, it's a very vague, distant memory, and but my mum sort of refreshed my memory, saying that the police came to the house weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks after the accident, possibly months, it could have been years, I don't know. And they asked my mum I used to have these little white booties with fur in the middle, if I remember correctly, and from what I've seen on pictures. If I can find a picture, I'll pop one up here. It was a little white bootie, and obviously after the accident it was shredded into two pieces, and obviously covered in blood and everything. And my mum, for some reason, kept the shoe and the sock. The police came around the house and said, listen, can we take this shoe and sock around to the children in the schools and raise awareness about children being on the roads, playing in the roads, and that's what happened to my shoe and boot. So like I said, after something so horrible that happened, at least that white boot and sock went around to different schools in the area to teach people and to teach the children not to play and go into the roads without an adult. Always use the crossings to cross the road, because as I've read earlier about the statistics and the data showing and proving what happens when people and when children especially don't follow the right protocol for being in the roads. So we're going to move on to something a little bit more positive now. After I did the gymnastics classes at school, I decided that I wanted to do dance. And the reason that I wanted to do dance is because I remember in the television series came out called Fame. Now, we all probably know it if we're into musicals now, because it became a stage musical. There became so many films of it. And anyway, back in the day, there was a series called Fame, and it was about a group of dancers that went to a performing arts college and danced and sang, and everything was jolly. And I remember sitting there in front of the television, and I remember thinking, that is what I want to do. And I was so young, and I remember that is what I want to do. And bearing in mind, I didn't know about jobs. I didn't know people had to get jobs and earn money and stuff like that. And I didn't even know if it was possible to do that. So I said to my parents, I want to dance. And I started dance class. So I started my dance class, and I'm really enjoying it. I was getting more and more flexible. My foot was working okay, which was fantastic. And obviously I was still doing the gymnastics. And I can't remember exactly which one, whether it was the dance teacher or the gymnastics teacher, that one of them said to me that you cannot do both. And I was like, but I want to do both. And they said, you can't do both because it's a conflict, because it's very different techniques to being a gymnast than it is to being a dancer. But that was back then. Things in 2025 are very different. Everybody crosses and does dance and does acrobatics and everything. So anyway, cutting a long story short, I decided to do dance for many years. And I remember a few years later, actually, after my accident, in the 6 weeks holiday, they were auditioning for The Wizard of Oz. And so I went down to my local theatre, I auditioned for Wizard of Oz, and I got in. And I remember I played a munchkin, a little munchkin, and I also played a piece of corn. I know it's the starring role. I played a piece of corn, and I remember standing there with my arms in the air, swaying from side to side, which seemed like hours, and my arms were killing me holding them up. So that was it wasn't my first production, because the Jitterbug was, but that was a school production. But the closest one to a professional gig back then was I played a munchkin and a piece of corn in The Wizard of Oz, which I thoroughly enjoyed and made so many friends. But in the back of my mind, I was always thinking, oh my gosh, I hope they don't make me go bare feet, because obviously I had a scar on my foot and on my right thigh. And we all know how spiteful people can be. But they didn't, and we got through the production, and it was fabulous. Moving forward to a year later, in the next year, I auditioned for a part in Oliver, and at the same theatre, and I got the part, and I was one of Fagin's gang. So I'd gone up in my roles, and I almost a starring role, but not quite. So I played in Fagin's Gangs. And I'm sure my parents have got some pictures from that. They might not be very clear, but that was great fun. And that just gave me more ammunition, because I was like, I really want to do this. So I carried on with my dance classes. I was working really hard studying jazz, tap, ballet, everything that I possibly could, working on my flexibility. And that's what I did up until I was 16 years old. And then I said, okay, we've got to take this a step further. So I started auditioning for dance colleges, and I finally got into one in Bristol, called All That Jazz Dance and Fitness Academy. And I got into there with a scholarship, because as we all know, to go to Italian Conti or Erdang or any of the massive schools, it's so expensive. But luckily I got in on a scholarship. Now, don't forget, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. I release shorts daily, so go and check out my shorts, and my longer formats every few weeks. So please don't forget to check some of my other content out. So let's move forward to 1 year. I'm nearly at the end of my training with my dance academy, school, college, whatever you want to call it. And I thought, oh, what can I do now? So I packed my bags on my day off and I went down to London. My first time in London, my eyes were like saucers. And I found Bodyworks, no, not Bodyworks, Danceworks, which is a very famous dance studio in London. And I went to an audition for a male dancer, and I got there and I did all my stretches and everything. And there was a guy, I remember, who looked very, got an itchy nose, who looked very similar to I did. You know, we're both olive skinned. And I had my hair tied up at that point, and he did as well. The only difference between us was he had a moustache. Anyway, we auditioned for this job. I had no clue really of where it was or what show it was in. I just wanted the experience of auditioning for a professional working job. Even though I wasn't supposed to do it because I was nearing the end of my term. So anyway, I went to this audition and lo and behold, I got the job. I got the job, guys. I could not believe it. I thought I was it. Then they said to us, okay, you've got to sign the contract right now. In 1 week, you will be flying to Spain, Benidorm, to work at the Benidorm Palace. That was my first ever professional working job as a dancer. And let me tell you, I had a blast learning another, because back then obviously I didn't speak Spanish, I do now. So learning another language, meeting new people, seeing their customs, how they work, it was just absolutely amazing. So that just goes to show, guys, that was my first job, and I was very, very lucky in my dance and acrobat career to be constantly working all over the world in different countries, in Japan, in Korea, Italy, Portugal. The list is endless with different contracts and different companies. But it just goes to prove, guys, that it doesn't matter where you start in life, because as you know from my story, my childhood accident was pretty horrific, you know, with the car accident and being run down by a hearse. I can't believe it was a hearse of all things, and being run down by a hearse that, and I still managed to go on to work as a professional dancer, which was incredible. But let me just remind everybody, it wasn't easy, guys. Remember, I was a professional dancer and I had these scars on my ankle, which obviously as I grew, the scar got smaller, even though it still covers my whole foot, and the skin grafts. And every job that I went for after that, every job that I auditioned for, I always was in the back of my mind thinking, please don't let there be any barefoot work. And at the Benidorm Palace, my first contract, my first professional contract, as we were rehearsing, there was something like 6-7 weeks rehearsal before we even did the real show. And they said, okay, we're going to do this number. The singer's going to be in the front. She's going to be singing Goldfinger. It was this mixed race lady singing Goldfinger in this beautiful, beautiful gold sequin dress. And basically we had this skimpy little outfit. It was something, well, I'll call it a budgie smuddler for argument's sake. It was a gold G-string with all straps on. And I will try and fish out a photo from back then. And I think, if I remember rightly, we had sandals on, but you could see my scar on my foot specifically. So every night before the show, I used to smother my my thigh where my skin graft was and my foot where the scar is, I used to smother them in this thick makeup, stage makeup. I used to rub it on, pat it down with powder, rub some more on, pat it down so it wouldn't be seen in the performance. And I had to do that before the show had started. And the opening number, we had white trousers on. So imagine my white trousers were full of makeup from this pan stick, for want of a better word, this pan stick. And the second number was Goldfinger, so we had to rush, get changed really quickly into Goldfinger. That's why I used to put it on before the opening number. And I remember the owners of the Benidorm Palace said to me, why have these white trousers got so much makeup on them? And you know, I was so embarrassed that I couldn't tell them. I said, oh, I don't know why, blah, 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 I don't know why. But that's what I had to do for the whole year that I was there. And that brought up other challenges as well, because in Spain, in Benidorm, there's the beach. And on our free time, when we had a free time, we'd go down to the beach. And I remember if there was a group of us, which it was a big cast, I always used to sit on the right hand side on the beach, because my scar is on my right leg and foot. So I'd always sit on the right hand side, so they'd all be dotted down here on the beach, so they'd never ever see my scar. So yes, guys, there was lots of challenges. That wasn't the only thing. I got an audition for the Lion King stage musical, and I wouldn't go to that audition because of my scar. And I know it's set in Africa and everything's barefoot, so I didn't go to that audition. So, you know, don't get me wrong, so there was still lots and lots of challenges ahead. And it's only really the last 10 years where I've not been bothered about my scars. I mean, they're part of me, they're who I am and what makes me me. And now I'm not so bothered about them. I'll go down the beach and, you know, I won't even bother covering it up. I'll wear flip-flops and sandals and you know, it doesn't bother me now. But, you know, so there was lots of challenges, guys. But I just wanted to tell you my story, because it doesn't matter where you've came from. With this horrible accident that happened, I still managed to follow my dream and work as a professional dancer, which I had the blast and the best time of my life. I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. Subscribe just down here and watch some of my others, and I'll see you in the next one.